We're talking here about $60 billion of untapped wealth. Is this unprecedented? Are we at a peak here?
Yeah, I've been tracking this for several years, and the trajectory is only going up. In recent times, that's kind of been driven by SoftBank, and I think just generally the whole startup scene is incredibly bullish right now. And that $60 billion figure is just gigantic. Right at the top, Elon Musk with something like $14.6 billion tied up in SPACEX. And even the guys right at the bottom have got 10-figure stakes. So it's just an incredible amount of wealth, but I guess the key point is it's sort of paper wealth, and the challenge is how can they monetize it, do they crystallize it, and I guess will it come to pass?
Right, and these tycoons are matching up their valuations to these private markets, which can be rather foggy. So how closely aligned are the estimations of their net worth to reality?
So there's definitely wealth here, and you can see that from the unicorns that have gone public, Snap, Dropbox. They've all ultimately gone public at very big valuations. The interesting thing is when you look at someone like, say, Uber, and these valuations just seem to vary dramatically, from the headline figures we sometimes hear about. So Uber, take the SoftBank deal. Uber raised money at $1 billion, sorry, 70 billion, when it took $1 billion from SoftBank. But then existing shareholders sold at something like $48 billion. So you've got this very big discrepancy, and sort of putting an exact number on that is definitely more art than science at the moment.
Right, and at the top of your list was Elon Musk, who we've been discussing extensively on this show. His personal stake in SpaceX is valued at $14.6 billion. Is he likely to tap into that anytime soon?
Oh no, absolutely not. He's probably the extreme example of this wealth all being on paper, because he's kind of gone out there publicly and said, hey, SpaceX is not going to go public until we start flying regularly to Mars. So who knows when that will be. And in terms of sort of to reassure investors and such like that, he's not really going to be able to monetize any of that stake at all. So then he obviously looks at Tesla, but he's thinking of taking that private as well and saying he won't reduce his stake at all. So he could be a $25 billion guy, but actually pretty cash poor.
And there is a rule change that's being considered in Congress right now that would allow some of these big-time unicorns to sort of gauge big-time investor interest before taking the plunge in the public markets. What impact do you think that's going to have? Will we see more IPOs as a result of this? I think it's really interesting. News just come out today, and you suspect it probably will, because they just have a bit more certainty about the kind of valuations that they're likely to hit on that first day of trading. Funnily enough, it might be more beneficial for the smaller companies out there, say not the Ubers or the WeWorks, which have bankers galore, but perhaps the smaller unicorns where they can get a bit more certainty that, hey, we'll be able to move from private to public and still see these gigantic fortunes and these gigantic valuations come to pass. And you mentioned Uber earlier. What are some of the most egregious examples of just how spongy private valuations can be?
So I think probably Palantir is the real standout. So in 2015, that raised funding at about $20 billion. And investors sort of blown away by the possibilities offered by this data mining venture. Since then, they haven't really kind of delivered. So what you're seeing is companies like Morgan Stanley, which do own stakes in them through various funds. Some of them have marked down Palantir from $20 billion in 2015 to I think it's $6 billion for Morgan Stanley at their latest mark, which was the end of May. So I mean, that's a huge discrepancy, and the impact it will have on the founders, who include people like Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, is their paper wealth could be in the aggregate $8 billion if you believe Palantir is worth $20 billion. If it's worth $6, they're practically paupers with about $2 billion or so.